Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets by J.K. Rowling. Chapter 12, The Polyjuice Potion. They stepped off the stone staircase at the top and Professor McGonagall rapped on the door. It opened silently and they entered. Professor McGonagall told Harry to wait, and left him there, alone. Harry looked around. One thing was certain. Of all the teachers' offices Harry had visited so far this year, Dumbledore's was by far most interesting. If he hadn't been scared out of his wits that he was about to be thrown out of school, he would have been very pleased to have a chance to look around it. It was a large and beautiful circular room full of funny little noses. A number of various silver instruments stood on spindle-legged tables, emitting little puffs of smoke. The walls were covered with portraits of old headmasters and headmistresses, all of whom were snoozing gently in their frames. There was also an enormous claw-footed desk, and sitting on a shelf behind it, a shabby turreted wizard's hat, the Sorting Hat. Harry hesitated. He had cast a wary eye around the sleeping witches and wizards on the walls. Surely it couldn't hurt if he took the hat down and tried it on again, just to see, just to make sure it had put him in the right house. He walked quietly around the desk, lifted the hat from its shelf, and lowered it slowly under the hat. It was much too large and slipped over his eyes, just as it had done the last time he had put it on. Harry started at the blackened side of the hat, waiting. Then a small voice said his ear. "Be in your bonnet, Harry Potter?" Yes, Harry muttered. Sorry to bother you. I wanted to ask, you've been wondering whether I put you in the right house, said Harry smartly. Yes, you were particularly difficult to place, but I stand by what I said before. Harry's heart leaped. You would have done well in slithering. Harry's stomach plumped. He gathered the point of the hat and pulled it off. It hung limply in his hand, grubby and faded. Harry pushed it back onto its shelf, feeling sick. You're wrong, he said around to the still and silent hat. It didn't move. Harry backed away, watching it. Then a strange gagging noise behind him made him wheel around. He wasn't alone after all. Standing on a golden perch behind the door was a distinct-looking bird which resembled a half-plucked turkey. Harry stared at it, and the bird looked playfully back, making its gagging noise again. Harry thought it looked very ill. Its eyes were dull, and even as Harry watched, a couple more feathers fell off its tail. Harry was just thinking that all he needed was for Dumbledore's pet bird to die, but he was alone in the office with it, when the bird burst into flames. Harry yelled in shock and backed away into the desk. He looked feverishly around in case there was a glass of water somewhere, but couldn't see one. The bird, meanwhile, had become a fireball. It gave one loud shriek, and the next second there was nothing but a smothering pile of ash on the floor. The office door opened. Dumbledore came in, looking very somber. Professor! Harry gasped. Your bird, I couldn't do anything. He just caught fire. To Harry's astonishment, Dumbledore smiled. About time, too, he said. He's been looking dreadful for days. I've been telling him to get a move on. He chuckled and snot looked on Harry's face. The folks is a phoenix, Harry. Phoenixes burst into flame when it's time for them to die, and are reborn from the ashes. Watch him. Harry looked down in time to see a tiny, wrinkled newborn bird poke its head out of the ashes. It was quite as ugly as the old one. It's a shame you had to see him on a burning day, said Dumbledore, seating himself behind his desk. He's really, really handsome most of the time. Wonderful red and gold plumage. Fascinating creatures, phoenixes. They can carry immensely heavy loads. Their tears give healing powers, and they make highly faithful pets. In the shock of folks catching fire, Harry had forgotten why he was there for it. But it all came back to him as Dumbledore settled himself in the high-backed chair behind the desk and fixed Harry with his penetrating light blue stare. Before Dumbledore could speak another word, however, the door of the office flew open with an angry bang, and Hagrid burst in, a wild look in his eyes. His balaclava perched on top of his shaggy black hat, and the dread rooster still swinging from his hand. It wasn't Harry, Professor Dumbledore, said Hagrid urgently. I was talking to him 2 seconds before that kid was found. He never had time, sir. Dumbledore tried to say something, but Hagrid went ranting on, waving the rooster around in its agitation, sending feathers everywhere. It can't be him. I'll swear it in front of the Ministry of Magic if I have to. Hagrid, You got the wrong boy, sir. I know Harry never... Hagrid, said Dumbledore loudly. I did not think that Harry attacked those people. Oh, said Hagrid, the rooster falling limply at his side. Wait, I'll wait outside then, Headmaster. And he stomped out, looking embarrassed. You don't think it was me, Professor? Harry repeated hopefully as Professor Dumbledore wrenched rooster feathers off his desk. No, Harry, I don't, said Dumbledore, though his face was somber again. But I still want to talk to you. Harry waited nervously while Dumbledore considered him, the tips of his long fingers together. I must ask you, Harry, whether there is anything you'd like to tell me, he said gently. Anything at all. Harry didn't know what to say. He thought of Malfoy shouting, "You'll be next, Mudbloods," and of the Polyjuice potion shimmering away in Morning Myrtle's bathroom. Then he thought of a disbanded voice he had heard twice and remembered what Ron said. Hearing voices no one else can hear isn't a good sign, even it's to the wizarding world. He thought, too, about what everyone was saying about him, and his growling dread was somewhere connected with Slytherin. No, said Harry. There isn't anything, Professor. The double attack on Justin and nearly headless Nick turned what had hitherto been nervousness into real panic. Curiously, it was nearly headless Nick's fate that seemed to worry people most. What could possibly do that to a ghost? People asked them each other. What terrible power could harm someone who had already died? There was almost a stampede to book seats on the Hogwarts Express so that students could go home for Christmas. At this rate, we'll be the only ones left, Ron told to Harry and Hermione. Us, Malfoy, Crabbe and Goyle. What a jolly holiday it's going to be. Crabbe and Goyle, who always did whatever Malfoy did, had signed up to stay over the holidays too. But Harry was glad that most people were leaving. He was tired of people skirting around him in the corridors, as though he was about to sprout fangs of spits posing. Tried of all the muttering, pointing and hissing as he passed. Fred and George, however, found all his funny. They went out of the way to march ahead of Harry down the corridor, shouting, "Make way for the Harrow Slytherin! Seriously evil wizard coming through!" Percy was deeply disapproving of this behavior. "It is not a laughing matter," he said coldly. "Oh, get out of the way, Percy," said Fred. "Harry's in a hurry." "Yes, he's nipping off to Chamber of Secrets for a cup of tea with his fanged servant," said George, too. Ginny didn't find it amusing either. "Oh, don't!" she wailed every time Fred asked Harry loudly who he was planning to attack next, or George pretended to warn off Harry with a large clove of garlic when they met. Harry didn't mind. It made him feel better than Fred and George at least, though the idea of this being Slytherin's hair was quite ludicrous. But their antics seemed to be aggravating Draco Malfoy, who looked increasingly sour each time he saw them at it. "It's because he's bursting to say it's really him," said Ron knowingly. "You know how he hates anyone beating him at anything, and you're getting all the credit for this dirty walk." "Not for long," said Hermione in a satisfied tone. "The Polyjuice potion is nearly ready. We'll be getting the truth out of him any day now." At last the term ended, and silent deep as the snow on the ground descended on the castle, Harry found it peaceful, rather than gloomy, and enjoyed the fact that he, Hermione, and the Weasleys had the run off of Gryffindor Tower, which meant they could play Exploding Snap loudly without bothering anyone, and practice dueling in private. Fred, George, and Ginny had chosen to stay at school rather than visit Bill in Egypt with Mr. and Mrs. Weasley. Percy, who disapproved of what he termed the childish behavior, didn't spend much time in the Gryffindor common room. He had already told them pompously that he was only staying over Christmas before it was his duty as a prefect to support the teachers during his troubled time. Christmas morning dawned, close and quiet. Harry and Ron, the only ones left in their dormitory, were woken very early by Hermione, who burst in, fully dressed and carrying presents for them both. "Wake up!" she said loudly, pulling back the curtains at the window. "Hermione, you're not supposed to be in here," said Ron, shielding his eyes against the light. "Merry Christmas to you too," said Hermione, throwing in his present. "I've been up for nearly an hour, adding more lace winds to the potion. It's ready." Harry sat up, suddenly wide awake. "Are you sure?" Positive, said Hermione, shifting Scabbers to the right, so that she could down on the end of his four-poster. If we're going to do it, I say it should be tonight.